Can everybody see the slide? Yeah. Okay. So
Yes.
first of all, welcome to the Millicent Rogers Museum. We're presenting this native plants in the desert Southwest. Our presenter is Dr. Richard Rubin. And before I go to the first slide, I do have to share with you guys about what I have on, because this is not my regular everyday attire. These are squash blossom necklaces, and they have them in our museum store. Of course, I'm going to give it a little plug for our museum store. People think sometimes squash blossom, you think that might be this here. I've got two of them on actually. These are called a nausea. This is not the squash blossom. The squash blossom is this little teeny piece. And they actually are mimicking pomegranates. So the squash blossom was not the Native American name for them. Carmela, Curator, do you want to say anything else about squash blossom necklaces? Is she there?
The great thing about squash blossom necklaces is that it's something that's come together from several different backgrounds. The nausea, which is the bottom part, which is the horseshoe shape, was originally Moorish, and it went through Spain and was brought over by the Spaniards on the horse bridles, adopted by the Navajo. So has a super interesting long history. And then the pomegranate blossoms, there's a couple of different stories about where they originated, but all of them coming together in this one fabulous piece of jewelry, but with different influences and different cultures. And it's a very popular piece of jewelry out here.
I think it really represents shared culture too, because the Navajo shared, and then all different pieces of it with the silver and the turquoise. And so anyway, that's a little garden jewelry, a squash blossom necklace. So here we go. This is where the Millicent Rogers is located, our first slide. So this is the current location. And as I said earlier in the introduction, this property was donated to the museum in 1968 by the Andersons. And in the background, you can see the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. So just to give yourself sort of some placement on your little tour into New Mexico today. And this is, Richard, I'll let you speak about the plants. Go ahead.
Yes, well, the hacienda was really developed as a home. So we have a variety of fruit trees, some decorative, some edible, that go back to the 40s. And it's been a lot of fun for me, kind of maintaining the trees. I discovered an apricot on the south side that it was covered over by some volunteer junipers that grew up. So we cut down the junipers, pruned off the dead wood, did some regenerative pruning, and this summer had a wonderful crop of apricots, which go back to the 1700s when the Franciscan Padres brought many different garden plants, fruit trees, hollyhocks. That's an interesting story on its own, with their settlements in order to develop the areas around their chapels and churches. So,
and one of the things I would like to say about this photo is because people, we tend to take this for granted in New Mexico, and people who have not been here or aren't familiar with our climate haven't necessarily seen it, but that is the true blue of the New Mexico sky. That's a very common sight in New Mexico. So it's one of the...
And I might say that this gray is not our typical sky.
No, this photo is our typical sky.
We are blessed in having some rain tonight and maybe some snow tomorrow, because this is the shift from into November, and boy, do we need the water.
Okay,
So
Richard, Indian blanket flower.
okay. Yes. This is also called Gaillardia and comes in various shades. And it's a wonderful native, very hardy. This one grew up in kind of a weedy area by the office that Karen grabbed a picture of. My wife has dozens of these growing in her flower garden and loves to reseed them every year. Sometimes they survive as perennials, sometimes they come up in the middle of the driveway. It's just a wonderful, hardy native.
Thank you.
And another hardy native is, I know on the white part, actually, there's white yarrow, and there's also Rocky Mountain Penstemon. Now, the penstemons are really interesting. It essentially means there's 5 stamens, is what the name is relating to. And there are maybe 100 different species. In Los Alamos, a retired chemist developed a native garden of penstemons where he has at least 75, 80 varieties. And they're just wonderful and they're vigorous. So this blue one is our Rocky Mountain version. We get tall stems with red flowers that the hummingbirds love, and that's just an interesting one. This also is not in the developed garden. This is right next to the wall, the back wall of the museum. So that's an example of the vigor of these native plants here.
There's your favorite.
Oh, there it is with a little bit of blooming. This was a tough year. We had a very dry spring, so the woods rose didn't bloom as much. But again, these are ones I put in about 5 years ago, 18 inches tall. Now they're 3-4 feet, and along the adobe wall in the front, the portico is just to the right of us of the main museum entrance. But it's just a neat shrubbery.
There's Winona again.
Yeah, and there's our friend Winona.
I wanted people to notice the patina on her bronze hair with the plant. It's so lovely.
Right.
Yeah.
We're just having a discussion with Carmela whether you want to go. She's been here 20 years. She's bronze. Let the natural evolution of the patina, or whether you want to give her a good refurbishing so that she can bloom in
I
some of
think
her
with the plant, the patina, lovely.
Yeah, well, okay, and here's a wonderful picture of the Rocky Mountain bee plant in bloom. And as I say, I'm just amazed how they really love to be in these pots. Right? I've tried to put them in the ground here. At home, I have half barrels where they grow every year. And again, it's an annual that reseeds itself with the seed pods coming off the top. Just a plant with a great personality and also artistic utility. Oh, yes. All right. Now, here's something for all you native plant mulch geeks. How many qualities do you consider when choosing a mulch? Do you want something physically protective? Do you want something aesthetically attractive? Do you want something nutritionally augmenting for the soil and for the plants? Do you want something organic or something that's been more manufactured? That's 4. I thought there might be 5. I don't know. You tell me. But here's the conclusion. And this was my choice for our gardens here, because it is New Mexican, it is organic, it is chemical free, it is non-augmenting, because I guess a lot of you agree with me, you don't need augmentation for native plants, right? And it's relatively inexpensive. So in the southern part of the state, we have large groves of commercial pecan trees. So this mulch is available. I can buy a pickup truck load for a reasonable cost, and it's just a great mulch that's attractive and physically protective and meets the other criteria too. So that's a New Mexico version of picking a mulch for native plants.
Thank you.
Yep, here's the prickly
This is
pear.
what's happening right now.
And in the spring, when especially if it's wet, beautiful red flowers, sometimes yellow. What's next, ma'am?
Okay. The mystery tree.
Oh, this was a great native plant play story. So the south side of the old hacienda had a garden. Let's go back.
Yeah, I want to go back to it. Hang on.
Has what was a garden area, and there's a adobe wall, and that's where there's an apricot tree, and we have pictures from the 50s where it had, lilacs growing, and there's a little Orno.
I have to go all the way through it quick. Sorry, you guys. Keep going, Richard.
There's an old Orno. So anyway, we're working on actually an archaeological survey of that area now and have plans to restore it because it's just a beautiful example of a 1950s hacienda. And so I've been spending a lot of time out there because most people don't go back there, but in my stewardship of the gardens. So this started blooming. We had a very wet snow last winter. So I didn't know what it was. So I took pictures, and actually a couple of my native plant friends came, and John Ubelacher, who's the retired Southern Methodist University botanist who's retired out here, we all kind of said, what is this? Native plant folks like playing these games. Took a bunch of pictures and looked on iNaturalist, and we were thinking it was a mock orange. And don't ask me to explain why it's called Philadelphus, I don't know. Microphyllis, small leaves. But anyway, we were thinking that's what it was. But John said, it could be a few other things. We have to wait till the tree with its fruit tells us what it is. Well, forward 2-3 months, turns out to be a crabapple, some kind of hybrid Japanese crabapple that clearly the Anderson family planted 1960s or so maybe. And since we've been watering it and taking care of it, and I did some pruning of the dead wood, it's decided to bloom. So fun story.
Yeah.
Things were brought here to New Mexico somewhat when the Santa Fe Trail opened up, which was, post-Civil War, but a lot when the railroad came through. We've got all sorts of plants of many different kinds. And we also get a lot of invasives for a variety of reasons, and that's a whole nother topic of discussion.
Okay, let's see. This is our horseshoe tree. Richard actually put this together for us this year because it had been in storage. And as the slide says, it was a gift from a member in the past. It's not a part of our collections, but it certainly is very unique to the Southwest. And
Yeah.
Richard, do you want to talk about it at all? It's heavy, isn't it?
And, we have the lawn by the original front entrance to the house has a globe that's about 4 feet in diameter, and it's up on a stand about 3 feet tall, but it's a absolute spherical globe, all out of horseshoes.
Yeah.
This guy, quite a craftsman, and I understand he was just a guy from Oklahoma who used to come out here and loved, he was being a sculptor with horseshoes. Yeah. So we have that, and then this tree this conifer Christmas tree was apart in 16 sections back in a storage room, a workshop from the former caretaker. So I just said, this needs to be put back. So it was very handy. One of the grandson of the family that donated the house, David Anderson, is also a very handy. He's a jeweler, but he knew how to weld broken pieces together. So we had a lot of fun putting it back up. And yes, it looks like a Christmas
His screen is frozen.
tree, and I'm sure it'll be lit up in December.
It sounds like your screen.
It's a wonderful conifer.
Richard, it sounds like it must be getting a little windy out there because the screen is trying to freeze. I'm going to go to the next slide, and maybe if it's getting too windy, you guys could go into gallery 1. Would that work? Or do you think it's going to be okay for the question and answer? It's up to you. I'll present the next couple of slides.
Yeah,
so I'm just sharing, if you had come to the museum, you would have had an opportunity to walk through our museum store. So I'm letting you see some of the garden themes in the store. We have a variety of books about native plants and their uses. We have products from Taos Bee Company, which is a natural product, and of course some note cards, address book and whatnot. You can find those on our website if you're interested. And then I want to thank you for your interest in the Millicent Rogers Museum. And there's the website for the New Mexico Native Plant Society, as well as our website. And I would like to say that I'm going to be sending this PowerPoint presentation to all of you as a thank you to being our guests. So you can have it for like a little souvenir, just as if you had come and maybe gotten postcards at the museum. And then this is a sneak peek glimpse inside the museum. So you'll see that there is a lot of turquoise jewelry. There's a squash blossom necklace. That's called, Carm, is that petty point or needle point? I think that's petty point. Petty point is when those little teeny stones are all in designs like that. Needle point is one side is rounded and one side is pointed. And this would be Navajo. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carmela, please. Navajo. And then the necklace that you see on the right side of your screen is made out of rose gold. That is a Millicent Rogers design. She designed and made that necklace. That's brand new out of our vault because it was getting some repairs. And so I just wanted to give you a little moment for inside the museum. If you're ever in Taos, you have to be sure and come visit us. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing and go back to just the regular meeting. And let's see, we want to do some question and answer and just kind of open it up to whomever would like to. You guys can turn on your microphones and participate in just kind of a casual conversational tone if you want to.
Okay, am I on?
Yeah, I can see you. It should be gallery.
Beautiful art objects. I want to show, you know, in some circles, when you say you have a fetish, you're in trouble. Out here among our Puebloan artists and also the spiritual beliefs, maybe you can see I have this lovely Mexican agate frog. Now, when I had my first summer out here, and I'm out of college, I found this in a shop in Gallup, and it was just a few dollars, what I could afford. But this was just, besides being a lovely stone, the frogs are symbolic of producing water. also of fertility, because they come out of the mud after hibernation. And so there was a magical, mystical quality to them. But so this was a fetish. And back when, so I really enjoy wearing them, especially talking about garden things to encourage the water spirits. And I have to add that in 1972, when I was an intern down at the University of New Mexico hospitals, we had to dress up. So I made her into a bolo tie. You can, buy the braided thongs and points, and glued her on. So now this was my dress up for being an intern in the hospital, because these are ties out here. Okay, questions?
You guys need to turn off your microphone, or turn on your microphones. Take your mute, unmute yourselves, and you can just have question and answer.
Hi, I have a question for Richard. If you wanted to grow a native New Mexican succulent as a houseplant, which one would you recommend, and where could we get the plant or seeds for the plant?
I did not set this up with you. I've never met you before. So, but I'm going to pull out something I brought.
Oh.
Because I had a sense that question may come up. And being a supporter of native plant societies, this is a wonderful publication produced by a couple of people. The lead was woman Sally Wasowski, who produced this about 15 years ago, Native Gardening in Northern New Mexico. And you can obtain this from the Native Plant Society. We have a website, Taos chapter. You can track us down, Google us. And it has multiple sections on trees, shrubs, ground covers, herbaceous flowers, grasses, nurse plants. So, and it's practical. It's for gardeners, but it also has the various technical and care information. And again, it's $10 from the New Mexico, the Taos chapter of the Native Plant Society of New Mexico. So that's a general answer to your question. The indoor-outdoor issue, got to think about that, because I used to doing things outdoors.
Are there any other questions
Yeah.
or comments?
I'd leave it to you to just kind of go through the book and pick things out. There are many things that are possibilities, for that can be done as houseplants, in baskets, hanging baskets, in pots inside, depending on how you handle the environmental conditions. Great many. And there are seeds, by the way, available there are several reputable suppliers, many in the West, that provide native plant seeds. And also advice on how to grow them. There are some that are spring planting, fall planting, and a wide range of types.
Also, I'm just putting out there, if you guys would like to ask questions through the chat feature, I can read them and ask them in a more, generalized, anonymous format.
I have a question,
Mm-hmm.
and this is for Richard. Richard, can you discuss a little bit about encouraging the appropriate use of native plants and the role of conserving water, land, and maybe wildlife?
Say that again for me. That sounded like
A
a big
little
topic.
bit about the appropriate use of native plants in the role of conserving water, land, and maybe wildlife.
Wow.
Did you get it?
That's a wonderful devotion that a lot of people are paying attention to. You know, out here we pay a lot of attention, of course, to xeriscaping. That's one. That's one answer, to make your choices depending on water needs. You can't take water for granted like you can out east. Second thing that comes to mind immediately is how much non-human life is supported by the biota, by plants. So to think about what we're doing for all the other animals, birds, insects, when we're choosing plants. This is a really significant topic. When you want to put in a tree, for example, do you pick something decorative or do you pick something that's going to make a difference for your pollinators and your birds? And you know, that's one of the ethical topics. It's a very Leopoldian topic, but it's something that we really need to be considering, and it's something I do personally a great deal in my relatively small area at home, and what I choose to put in, you know, what we're doing for non-human life. And then you tell me, anything more specific in that broad?
Yeah, it was just a general question.
But it's important, yeah, that we're not so much, shall I say, oh, here's another one. Companion planting is a very significant topic, I believe, in what you're doing. Not just in your vegetable herb garden, but also in, you know, choosing your mixture of native plants and how they go together. And there, for example, there are some native plants, hairy vetch. Any hairy vetch out east? I can't say it was on my radar, but it is a kind of legume that is a very vigorous native. They grow a foot, 18 inches, 2 feet tall. They have little blue flowers. They look kind of like a pea plant without the peas, and they're nitrogen fixers, and they're excellent to grow like under fruit tree orchards as a way of really replenishing the soil, being good for the pollinators, providing humus. It's an annual that reseeds itself, but they're very vigorous. I have them coming up in all sorts of unusual places around my area. So that's another concept. Plants like this that can be regenerative of the soil. I guess that's the big idea I'm thinking about, like cover crops. You know, besides that, there are others. Certain kinds of winter wheat.
2 more minutes. If anyone else has any questions or
So I'll
comments.
stop, give someone else a chance, but carry on.
Any further discussion?
I'll toss a much simpler question, I think. Have any of these native plants been discovered by actual Native Americans?
Oh, the knowledge goes back millennia. Here's one for you. Maize. So where'd corn come from? Well, it came from Mesoamerica. It was originally, it's a grass, but the hunter-gatherers gradually figured out, you know, we're again talking 3,000-4,000 years ago, how to choose different places to stay where the plants would grow best. Then they learned to choose different of the plants that were larger, more vigorous, bigger kernels, so that there was selective breeding. or selective farming. And I'm sure you all know the history of agriculture development, and from there. And the Native American knowledge, I mean, is also profound in the extensive sources of the multiple use, medicinal uses, food uses, material uses like for artwork and crafts. Some of it, and I must say, living amongst it, we also need to recognize how some of this is very privileged information too, that we can't just assume that there's an old Star Trek line that occurs to me from the Save the Whales movie. Captain, if these were ours to do with as we wish, wouldn't we be as guilty as those who led to their extermination? Well, this is Spock talking about whales. But the point is, it's also true of the plant knowledge and the plant uses.
One of the things that I will add to that, Gary, is that if you make it back to New Mexico and you come, to Taos and visit the museum, the ancestral pottery that we have in Gallery 4 shows pottery as old as the year 700 AD. And it's black and white pottery. And so the ancients had knowledge of the plants and used it for plant dyes. One of the most endearing galleries, I think, at the Millicent is the textile gallery, because it not only represents the blending of three cultures, which would be the Native American, the Navajo, the Hispanic, and Mexican cultures. It represents also a time period in America's history where this is all tied to the land. So the political boundaries are grayer. And what you see is groups of people who were connected to the land sharing culture through the dyes and the designs of the textiles. And a lot of that was plant knowledge. And then you see, bam, here's the railroad comes, we've got aniline dyes, and they're bright colors, but nothing can beat that hue of indigo. And you can see that up close and personal at the museum. So I think that's one of the highlighted areas in talking about plant dyes, certainly. So anyway, I'm gonna see if there's any other comments before I end the meeting. No? Well, again, thank you guys for coming. Gary, thank you for reaching out to us. This has been really great.
Yeah, thank you.
A really great, way for us to make some of our programming virtual and explore some of those platforms. As I said, I'm going to go ahead and send you all the email PowerPoint so you have that slide presentation. And then if you enjoyed the presentation, please think about giving us a donation through our website. And we hope that you are now considered our friends here at Millicent Rogers. So thank you.
Okay, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for the presentation, both you
Yeah,
and
lovely.
Dr. Rubin.
You're welcome. We'll see you.
It was really a nice escape for an hour.
Good. Yes, it was for us as well. Good.
Very nice.
Okay, be well.
We like the ongoing educational activities to present through the website of the museum and through membership channels.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.